and welcome to today's episode. Today I'm here with one of my gorgeous internet friends, Kerri. How are you?
Hi, Karen.
Good. Thanks for joining me. You've got a background in health and wellness. That was how we met. And we did a podcast together 15 months
Oh my gosh.
It was a while ago.
Something like that. Yeah.
A fair while ago. Go and listen to it. It's a good episode. But anyway, we've kept in touch because, Kerri's really nice. And one of the things we've been talking about recently are the events that are going on in the States right now, because you live in the Midwest, don't you?
I do.
And you're not one of those, what can I say with that? Look, I'm going to say a few things that might be quite offensive maybe to some people.
There's the disclaimer.
Yeah, here's the disclaimer. This is me looking at things from the other side of the world and in a different culture. And America has always bemused me because everything you see in the movies and on television and you read in the papers, it's all about how well off Americans are and the fabulous lifestyle they have and stuff like that. But you also have such poverty. I can't get my head around that, that it's so much about the one person that does well, but you forget in the 2,000 that are living on the streets. But let's start with your background. Tell me about you and your thoughts on what's happening right now in the US.
It's a shit show. I don't know that there's any other way to put it, honestly. So I'll back up. I'm a certified health and wellness practitioner, health coach, fitness nutrition specialist. I was a podcast host for about a year. You were on my podcast. With the events in the US, I kind of reached a point last October in 2021 where I was just like, I'm done with it. I don't want to be anywhere near it. I don't want my name attached to it. It does not feel good for me. And so much of the healthcare system here goes against things that I personally believe in. So I left. And I've been working in affordable housing since then. But I think it's almost like a toxic relationship where you just need to take a step back and redefine your core values and your boundaries. And this is who I am now. And learn how to stand in that. So I'm slowly dipping my toes back into the health and wellness field, but it has to be in a way that feels good for me or I can't do it. There's my background.
What was it that made you leave the health and wellness side of things?
Oh, Karen. Well, they can't fire me for saying it because I left. So let's go. So all this COVID stuff, I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing for work when we got the call saying, go home, it'll be over in 2 weeks, and then you can come back to work. In between that and October 2021, the rules, I don't know if we're doing video or not, but I'm doing air quotes. The rules are so all over the place and they would change day to day. And I understand that we didn't know all the things about COVID and we were learning as we went, but some of them seemed so arbitrary and applied to certain people, and certain people maybe didn't have to follow them as much or could get away without following them. The breaking point for me was an email that we got. Hang on, let me back up. We were having problems getting gloves or masks and just proper PPE to keep ourselves safe and keep our patients safe. And the breaking point for me was an email that we got saying that for the first time in that particular healthcare system's history, they had made such a profit that we were all getting bonuses. First time ever. And I went, well, what the F? That doesn't feel right. I don't want the bonus. If we're profiting off of this whole COVID thing to the extent where you can now give your employees a bonus, I don't want that. That feels disgusting. So I quit. I had no plan. I was just like, it doesn't feel good. And to be quite honest, whether you are for vaccine mandates or against them or whatever, I don't really care. I can see valid points on both sides of it. But as a health and wellness practitioner, my whole job is to empower people to make their own healthcare decisions, whether I agree with them or not, whether I think it's the best thing for them or not. It doesn't matter. That's not the point of it. And this healthcare company was like, here's this fancy little bonus we're going to give you, but now you need to follow all these rules. And I was like, well, if they're not going to give us the same autonomy that we are supposed to be giving our patients, that doesn't feel right either. So it was all within a couple of days of each other. And I was just like, okay, I'm done. That's it. Can't do it.
I struggle with the idea of the medical profession, not medical, really the pharmaceutical profession being about profit.
Bingo.
We've all got to make a living. That is not what I'm saying. But it's profit driven, and that's where I have the problem. You should not be making massive profits from other people's illnesses. My personal opinion.
100%.
And you don't even really have a strong Medicare system over there. Ours has followed the British system where it's free for all, and you can pay for private health cover, but no matter what.
Oh no, no. Barack Obama, he really advocated for what's it called? They call it Obamacare here, and it's not that. I can't think of it right now, but it's basically that Medicare system. And it wasn't perfect, but he was kind of forced into pushing it through just to get something pushed through. But there's such a stigma attached to it. Like, that's for lazy people. That's for people who don't want to work. And that's the biggest problem, is that people don't see it for what it is. It's helping people who were being charged extra for insurance because they had a pre-existing condition, or people who were born with something. I mean, these aren't even lifestyle issues. These are people who were born and just handed a shitty deck and they're being charged extra for medical care because why shouldn't they be? None of it makes any sense to me. And it's awful.
To me, the healthcare system is the same as the education system. You wouldn't judge a child as to whether they could get a good education or not. And the medical system falls under the same category, as far as I'm concerned. That's the way we've been brought up anyway.
Yeah, it's not that way here.
I suppose that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, is I don't understand the reasoning behind that. I can't get my head around it. And that was one of the intriguing things, because I like to understand.
Yeah.
Even if I don't agree with it, I want to understand. So talk to me about that, because it's so intrinsic to you in your culture. But outside of America, the rest of the world's going, what's wrong with them? I thought they were all for freedom of the individual and succeeding, but they don't seem to actually want to help anybody succeed.
So my husband, actually, we talk about this every once in a while. He doesn't like to talk politics, but every once in a while it'll just start to blurb out, and he's got a really great way of explaining things. And he explains it in that our system is broken. We all know this. All over the world, we know that the American system is broken. But it's the people who can afford to be in office. It's not the people who are elected into office. It's the people who can afford to push these things through. And those are the people who are terrified that anybody less than them could gain power. So you've got government who's tied up in the pharmaceutical industry, government who's tied up in big oil. It all comes down to money. And the minute I get a little bit of money, that equates to power. They don't want that. They want to make sure that the people who are unfortunate, for lack of a better word right now, stay there so that they can continue to have the power. That's my take on it. I'm sure there's lots of technical terms I'm missing, but layman's terms, it's all about power and money.
This is what I wanted to talk to you about, because you're sort of in the midst of it, which is, you're not an observer or an outsider or an analyst. You are somebody who's experiencing it. And each person's experience has a validity, because it doesn't matter whether somebody else thinks you're right or wrong or disagrees or anything. That's your opinion, and only you can decide whether it's right or not based on your personality and experiences. So just want to say that what we're putting out here are our experiences and understandings. I was reading an article the other week, and I hadn't considered this before. Western politicians, and I'm saying this because it's not just America, but Western politicians talk about other political systems such as India or Sri Lanka or places like that being corrupt. Thailand is a classic one at the moment because the people in power are taking bribes. But in America, they can give donations.
It's no different.
What is the difference, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I hadn't even considered that before.
Yeah. And if you take this donation, then do me a solid and pass this bill, or it's the same thing.
Okay, what was it like when you went from Obama to Trump? What changed in your daily lives?
I just got a shiver down my spine when you said it. So a little bit about myself and my family. When that happened, I was a single mom of 2 children. At the time, I had 2 daughters. And I remember waking up that morning and just crying because I was terrified. Like, I'm going to tear up now. I was terrified for their future. And I was told by so many people that I was overreacting, that it wasn't going to be that bad, that he was a great businessman and he was going to really turn this country around, whatever the hell that means. And here we are. I went from this powerful, and let's just be honest, Obama's not ugly. I thought he was very handsome, but we went from this man who could form a sentence, and he was eloquently just put together, a wife who was active in making sure that kids could get a nutritious meal at school, and they were just like refreshing for everything. And do I think they were perfect? No. I would never want that job. But they were just like, I just felt at ease when he was in office. And I remember the first time he ran and his whole platform was about change. And I was like, you know what? Yeah. And that's about when I started really paying attention to things. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I like this guy a lot. So 8 years of this guy who got it. And when he first came into office, he didn't buy into gay marriage, but he evolved and he admitted that, I see it differently now. And yes, now I support it. And he was able to be an adult, really. And then this buffoon somehow gets voted in. And all of a sudden, it's about grabbing pussy in the locker room. And I hate Black people and I hate the gays. And I'm like, what just happened? Like, everything just flipped upside down, and it became this terrifying place. You never knew what was going to be on the news that day, because what was he going to say? What was he going to do? It's just ugly. So ugly.
Looking at it from the outside and just reading between the lines of what you're saying, it was kind of like Obama wanted to take care of everybody.
Yes.
Safe.
Yes.
And then Trump came in and he did turn things around. He turned everything backwards.
Yes. Yep. And it suddenly felt very chaotic and just not a place you want to really live or raise your children, honestly. So it was the first time.
Did people actually change the way they dealt with other people during Trump's power? What happened?
I lost a lot of friends and family. All of a sudden, people felt brave enough to really say the things that they were thinking. So I mentioned earlier that at that time I had 2 daughters. I now have a daughter and a son. And all of a sudden, people who I really thought were my friends and people I confided in about my struggles with dealing with that were free to say whatever they wanted about gay people or transgender people or Black people, for that matter. I was raised by a Black man. Like, not a bone in my body is racist. It just isn't. And all of a sudden, these people are just the most transphobic, homophobic, racist, sexist, ageist. And it was okay to say those things because your president did and his followers did. And there was comfort in that group, I think. And it gave those people power to be who they were. It empowered them.
I hadn't thought about it like that, but you hit the nail on the head. All of a sudden, people could voice all their inner insecurities and prejudices because that was what their president was doing. So there was none of the understanding and community and support and everything else. There was not, that went out the window. It was all, I'm right. These are all the little narrow-minded beliefs that I have.
Yes.
That was my political opinion coming out there.
That's all right. You're hearing mine. And I heard a fun fact the other day that the American flag, the sales of those things skyrocketed once Trump went into office. There's a man in New Zealand who has a podcast, and he kind of got stuck here during COVID. And so he takes all these things that New Zealanders think that America does that are weird, and he did a whole episode on the flag and our obsession with the flag. So it was really interesting.
Yeah, we don't get it. Swearing allegiance to a flag? What on earth is that about?
Super weird.
I mean, we sing the national anthem and everything, but Australians have got a very, can I say, irreverent attitude towards things like that.
Yeah.
So we don't get that. Americans take themselves very seriously.
Yeah, it's boring. I like my weirdo friends.
It's just, there's no room for growth or expansion or any fun. There's no room for any fun, is there?
No. I mean, there is, but you have to really find it, and you really have to learn to trust that people are who they say they are. So those fun people, even now I'm seeing, like, are you really fun? Or are you just like, you're fun on the weekends, and then during the week, you're like this racist asshole at work. Yeah. You're right. We do take ourselves way too seriously.
You know, you lost a lot of friends and everything. And just saying that you said just then about you're never quite sure whether to trust somebody anymore. That's really heartbreaking.
It is.
What happened? Give me some examples of what went on.
Actually, I'm a wedding officiant too, because I can't sit still. But I had done a wedding for an old friend of mine from high school, and he gave me a great review on my Facebook page, on Google. His wife, who I had not met until the wedding day, we became Facebook friends. And then all of a sudden, I started noticing he was anti-BLM, saying some really homophobic things. And I was like, wait a second, my kid is homophobic. Like, I wouldn't come and say something nasty about your child. Why would you think that that's okay to say anything? He actually told me that he was disappointed because he thought that I was a God-fearing Christian. And then he sent me private messages apologizing for doing that publicly, but that he had to delete me and block me from his life because I didn't believe in the same things he did. Okay. It's unfortunate, but I guess if I'm not filled with hate, then I'm not the right person to be friends with. So there's that. I've had family members who I'm not like super close to, but different family members have spoken up and kind of said their true feelings about, the BLM movement or trans people or whatever. And I just unfollow, because it's not even worth the argument. I'm not going to change their mind. I can't take the hate out of their hearts. But it's unfortunate because those are the people who I used to have conversations with about coffee or, the weather or whatever. And that can't be anymore. And it's not like they were a daily part of my life, but when you spend that much time on social media, it does become a daily part of your life. And as you start to remove those people, you do kind of start to surround yourself with people who think exactly like you. And sometimes that controversy is, I don't want to say it's welcomed, but it's sometimes nice to expose yourself to other opinions and other perspectives. But it just got to a point where I couldn't anymore because it was hurtful. And my son was seeing it too. That was probably the worst part. He was seeing what these people were thinking of him the whole time. And these are people that he knew too. So, Mama Bear, unfollow.
Actually, that comment about he thought you were a God-fearing Christian, that was the one that made me reach out to you, because I was incensed, because I was, one, what the hell has religion got to do with it? I do not get the American obsession with religion. I really cannot understand it. But also, who are you to judge somebody else? And surely Jesus was all about inclusion and forgiveness and everything else, and yet you're not showing any of those things.
You know what? I'm not a God-fearing Christian. Like that. I'm not a Christian. I was raised Catholic, but I got out. And to say that to somebody as though it's an insult to my personality and my core values and my heart, I don't need a Bible to tell me to be a good person. I can just do it. And it's basically the same stuff that a Christian is expected to do. Like, I'm not out murdering people, and I'm not sleeping with my neighbor, and I don't need a book to tell me to be a good person. So to use that as an insult toward me, that's just, I don't know, that's unforgivable to me. So
it was to me as well, because it was judgmental and it was super manipulative as well. And that was, I don't do manipulation well. But that seems to be a common thing in America, religion as a manipulation as well. And again, I'm talking as an outsider here.
Religion, in my opinion, is manipulative. Oh my gosh, manipulative. The 4th of July was just on Monday, and unfortunately, I had to participate in it a little bit for work. We had a parade, so walked in the parade. But as we were standing there as a group, there was a church group, because there's tons of them. A church group saw that we had our children with us and walked up to us to try to get us to come to their Bible thing that they have for kids during the summer. And I was like, are you out here just trying to recruit kids? Like, that whole get them while they're young, so that it just grosses me out. I hate it.
Are you very much in the minority in America as far as religion goes, or is it just that the religious people are very, very vocal? They're actually the minority.
I wonder that a lot, actually. I feel like there's probably more of me than I think there are. We're just not as loud and proud about it. And I'm not trying to convert anybody from believing in God. Like, if that's what you want to believe, I'm really happy for you. If that gives you hope and joy, who am I to say that you're wrong? I'm not out here like trying to convert people. Yeah. People are messed up, Karen.
Yeah. Yeah. I look at America and the Donald Trump MAGA stuff as probably being a 5-year-old having a major tantrum about wanting their own things and not wanting to play with anybody. That's how it looks to me from the outside as a mother of 4. So what's your experience from that kind of perspective? What's your opinion on that kind of thing? I suppose thoughts is better way of putting it.
I agree with you. I think maybe 5-year-old is being gracious. I can't stand the guy. I personally try not to talk about politics with the people that I know, because again, it's that trust thing. Like, are they just nodding along and agreeing with me because they don't want to talk about it either? Or do they actually feel the same way? And we've all become so scared to talk about it because everybody's like cutting people out. But I know personally, most of the people that I associate with feel the same way I do. And they show it in their actions, and they show it in the way that they treat other people. They show it when they're glittered up with rainbows for the month of June. It's a pretty good sign that they're on this side. There are still people in my life who are all about Trump, and I don't understand it. But if we can at least come together and I'm trying to think of a good way to say it. At least come together and agree that we all just want to do the right thing, and appreciate that we all have different perspectives and we come from different backgrounds and we have different experiences, and they're not out there like marching against BLM or calling my son a faggot or whatever. I can kind of just say, okay, it's almost like having Christian friends. Like, I don't get it. I don't buy into it, but good for you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I was thinking the
Okay.
same thing. So when the issue I had during COVID and all the conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff, the issue I had wasn't that that was what they believed. You're welcome to believe what you like. The issue I had was that if I said I didn't agree with them, I got attacked viciously. I
Yes.
would not go on your post that I didn't agree with and tell you in great detail and at great depth and with the worst personal insults that I didn't agree with you. I'd just go, all right, good luck to you, and keep moseying on.
Yep.
I didn't like the fact that I wasn't free to state my opinion without getting publicly lynched for it. That was, and so anybody who publicly lynched me, goodbye. Right. And it's got nothing to do with your opinions. It's got everything to do with your actions. And it's the same with this, you know, if you want to vote for Trump, you vote for Trump, go for it. But don't force your opinions on me. You've got no right to do that.
Exactly.
That's my soapbox. And that's where all this business, moving on to the other topic we're going to talk about with the abortion side of things. That I know, right? There's the other can of worms we're going to talk
I'm rolling up my sleeves.
Love that. That's the other thing as well, because it ties in with that same kind of behavior, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And the abortion debate is nothing new. I mean, people have been debating this for years and years and years and years. But all of a sudden, it has become so disrespectful and so personally hurtful. Just, I do understand, but I don't understand the balls that people have gotten and the way that we talk to each other now. And it's just okay because we don't agree with you. So we're going to let you know in all the most hurtful ways that we possibly can, instead of just saying, you know what, I disagree, and then moving on. So,
and did that change happen during the Trump years?
I think so. I really do. I mean, I think back even when George W. was in office, and there was obviously a difference of opinions about some things, but I don't remember the hurtfulness and the personal attacks like there is now. And maybe social media has a lot to do with that. You know, people are braver behind a screen than they would be in person. But I think that Trump just really had that special quality that brought it out in people because he acted that way. And I will stand by that 100%.
Oh, as an outsider, that's how it looks to the rest all. Because in any organization, leadership comes from the top. Behavior that's acceptable comes from the top. So if your leader can behave like that and say things like that, then so can everybody else. Whereas you look at somebody like Obama, who's a born diplomat. He is all about listening to people and taking care of people and everybody else. Then that's the way everybody starts behaving. You know, it's not so much about the me thing.
Right.
So let's talk about the abortion thing. How has it become hurtful? How have things become personal and hurtful? That was what you were saying in the last thing, that it's become very personal. What happened?
Yeah. So I personally do not have an experience with abortion, other than I have 3 biological children. So I had 3 opportunities to make a choice. The things that I'm seeing, I have friends who have used this as a platform to tell their stories about they were 16 and just not ready. They were 14 and were raped by a family member. They were 38 and just medical reasons needed to be done. Whatever their story is, it doesn't matter. The point is that they had to make that choice. And I watched them be brave enough to tell these stories. I mean, there is nothing easy about admitting these things, telling people your most personal, intimate details. And I'm watching them just get slammed by their white male family members about how they should have just shut up and dealt with it, gave the baby up for adoption, whatever the case was. And I cannot wrap my head around that. It is absolutely disgusting. These are the people who are speaking up. It's the white males because they're the ones in power, right? But on top of that, I'm also seeing women shaming other women for the choices that they've made. And so I like to play Facebook detective sometimes, and then I click, and you don't have to scroll very far to figure out what side they're on politically. Everything is red. You got Confederate flags flying in the background, whatever it is. And so it makes it really hard to believe that had Trump not been in office, that they would have had the courage to say the things that they are saying.
I find it very difficult to comprehend. We can say to the guys, go and get a vasectomy. And they go, oh, no, you don't understand. It affects my manhood. It affects the way I think and everything else. Yeah, well, what does getting pregnant do to me? You've got no direct experience of it. What right do you have to impose your thoughts on me?
Mm-hmm.
Go and get a vasectomy. It's reversible. For God's sake, it'd solve all this problem. Don't see that happening anytime soon.
No, because the minute you start to try to regulate what a man does or their body, you're going to be shut down. There will be none of that because they're the ones in power.
I actually said to someone a couple of months ago, one of my sons, who is in politics and works for the government and stuff, and he asked about religion, and I said to him, dude, religions are written by men for the benefit of men, almost all of them. And he went, oh, I hadn't thought of that before. They are. There are very few religions that don't put men in power.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I don't understand the religion argument either, because America is supposed to have separation of church and state. And so once you start allowing religion to dictate what the laws are, we're screwed. Karen, I'm moving to Australia.
I know they got
oh my gosh.
Like to point the finger at Pakistan or Afghanistan if they're going to mix religion and the state again.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, Handmaid's Tale, because I'm really sorry looking at America now, heading down the Handmaid, it brings shivers to my spine.
Right. I've actually not seen the show. I understand the premise of it, but I've not seen it. So fill me in a little bit.
I couldn't watch the TV series. I read the book when it first came out yonks ago. It must be going on 30 years ago when I read the book. Oh. So basically there's been a civil war in America and nuclear weapons were involved that has made a lot of people infertile. And the place where it's set is run by religious fundamentalists. The men are all in power, and it goes back to the Old Testament, where I could be completely wrong here. I have in my mind Ruth couldn't bear children for a husband. So she said to her husband, okay, you have sex with my handmaid. I'll be there while you have sex and you get her pregnant, but it will be my child. Basically what happens is the woman lies down, Ruth lies down, she put a handmaid on top of her between her legs, and then her husband had sex with the handmaid while the handmaid was laying on top of Ruth.
Wow.
Whoever it was. And that's what these religious fundamentalists put into place in this post-apocalyptic thing. And then it goes into all this other side of it where the men actually go visit brothels, and they've captured the young women, not just to put as handmaids, but to work in these brothels as well. And there's this whole tale of it. And it's just, the main character was married to a black man. And so he'd gone off to fight and they think he was killed, but she had a daughter, and her daughter was taken away from her so they could instruct her daughter into how to become a good wife and handmaid or handmaid. Yeah. When Roe versus Wade was overturned, I just went, oh my God, it's The Handmaid's Tale.
Mm-hmm. Now I understand the reference a little bit more. Holy shit. Okay.
Watch it. It's on Netflix. Reading it, I struggled with because it is just horrifying. Watching it, I couldn't do. I actually couldn't. It was because a lot of the women actually force the women to do it, It's not the men that teach the other women to behave. It's the women.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I don't know if I can watch it now. It might be a little too real.
It's something that's been brought up a lot while Trump was in power. I know that. There's been a lot of talk of The Handmaid's Tale and articles with Margaret Atwood, who wrote it and everything. And she's written a couple of other things since then. She's written quite a lot, but a couple of other things along the same lines since then. But I find it really scary because I can see that is actually a possibility. And then you watch things like, I'm a shocking Netflix addict, but you watch things like that Mormon fundamentalist group who the leader was getting brides that were younger and younger. He ended up with 60 odd brides. This was like back in the noughties, 60 odd brides, some of them as young as 13, 12, 13, and he got sent to jail. How do women end up in that kind of position thinking that's okay?
I don't know. It blows my mind that even women who aren't in that position could get to that point. I don't know that I could ever, no matter what it was, sacrifice another human being. I cannot wrap my head around it.
What's really interesting is the family that she's in. They were the leading TV evangelists going on about how this was going to be a good thing. And now, 10 years later, she's trapped at home. And you see her side of it, how she realizes now how wrong she was, but there's nothing she can do because she's already trapped in it. Kind of like a Stepford Wives thing.
I wonder if they're so well brainwashed by the men who are in power that they truly believe that that's the right thing to do. I don't know.
It's about getting a little bit of power in your own circumstances as well, isn't it? If you can see that you can advance yourself. Yeah, it's just terrible. What are your thoughts on where things are going to go?
I'm terrified. I don't think it matters who is president at this point. Honestly, I think Joe Biden is just like filling a seat right now. I don't think he's doing anything. And then every once in a while, somebody tells him to say something useful and he does that. But the Supreme Court is terrifying because they're there until they die. I mean, like there's no term limits. And these are the people who are in power right now. It's not Joe Biden or whoever the next president will be. It's them. And if they're moving this quickly to change things, but they're doing things behind the scenes like, hey, we did this abortion thing. Look at all this. Get people fighting about that. And within 2 weeks, they voted on like 10 things that basically are suppressing women and minorities.
Really?
I was just reading an article about it, and they put a list of this is what your Supreme Court is doing right now in case you're not paying attention. And I was like, I wasn't paying attention. Holy shit. Oh my gosh, this is going to kill me.
Are they overturning previous judgments or are they making new judgments? How is it working?
Clarence Thomas has, in that report that was leaked, he made comments about wanting to basically overturn gay marriage, overturn something about women in the workplace. I don't know if it was like the pay or what exactly it was, but definitely taking a step a few decades back. And the only reason that I know that, I didn't read the report, like I don't have access to that stuff, but there have been people who have said because he's in an interracial marriage, his wife is white, and they've said that's where he's going to stop because then all of a sudden it will affect him. But anything else is fair game at this point, and that's the terrifying part. I have offered my wedding officiant services for the rest of the year to any gay couple that wants to get married before this all goes to shit, so they at least have some protection, hopefully, and I'll do it for free. I don't care if it's a Monday afternoon. Let's just get it done, get you married. I'm terrified for my children. I'm terrified for my oldest daughter who has been sucked into the Christian religion, and I'm terrified for my son who is not mature enough to be an adult, but unfortunately is an adult and doesn't know how to fight for his rights, doesn't know the steps he should be taking right now to protect himself. And I'm terrified for my 4-year-old daughter, who this is the world she was born into. Ugh, it's awful. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what her future looks like. It's not hopeful. And then there's like guilt for having a do-over baby. Shit. What did I do? This poor kid.
What's a do-over baby?
Oh, well, because my oldest is 22 and then the next one is 19 and now I have a 4-year-old. So I call her my do-over baby.
God, you must be a glutton for punishment.
Yeah. Well, I really like this age. 4-year-olds are fun. Yeah. Every once in a while, I'm like, what was I thinking? I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking in from the outside and reading newspaper reports and everything, but to talk to somebody, because you live in the Midwest as well, like you live in the heart of those rednecks, don't you?
Oh, yes.
Which must be so terrifying.
It really is. I don't know who's going to listen to this out of the people that I know. Just my daycare provider is one of those people that I was talking about where I know her personal beliefs now because she's gotten brave enough to say them. But at the same time, I need daycare. And there's such a shortage that until September, when my youngest goes to school, I need a daycare provider. Every morning, Karen, when I drop her off, because it's an in-home daycare, I get slapped in the face with the Trump flag that's flying on their porch. It's just, I want it to all go away. I feel like where we live in the Midwest, we're about 2 hours north of Chicago, hour north of Milwaukee. I feel like the further north you get, the more red it gets. It's really frustrating to drive to work. I have a 20-minute drive to work. To drive to work and count the number of trucks with the giant Trump flags still in the back that say Trump 2020. You can't get a new flag, really. The Confederate flags, just the blatant racism and all the isms, really. I mean, people have yard signs just announcing it and proclaiming to the world, I am a closed-minded asshole. And it's everywhere. It's really disheartening.
Because that's one of the things I don't understand as well. I only realized, or only cottoned on recently, that the Confederates, the big fight was because they didn't want to give up slavery. The fact that they didn't want to pay taxes to the British, but they didn't want to get rid of their slaves.
Right.
And you're flying that flag? That is so wrong on so many levels.
Yep. But their argument is that it represents the history of the South. Well, yes, but we're not discussing what that history is. Yeah. It's awful. It's awful. It's awful. It's awful.
And just one last thing before we go. I did say we got to wrap it up, but before we go.
Sorry.
No, it's my fault. I've got so many questions. You don't have to vote in America, do you?
No. Totally optional.
It's kind of like with putting up a post on Facebook and having all of those people massively disagree. They're the ones who are going to go out and vote because that's the way they do things, isn't it? Is that right?
Right. I think so. I think it's the people who feel very, very strongly on either side. I don't think we get as much of the middle people where they're like, I'm not really paying attention, or I don't really have strong opinions either way. I don't think those people are voting because they can't be bothered. It's
funny because when we came in the UK, we don't have compulsory voting either. When we came to Australia and you have to vote, everybody over 18 has to vote. I was just like, oh my God, that's barbaric. But, but now it's like looking at what's going on in America. No, that's the way it needs to be. You have to vote. This is your country. Take an interest in it. Vote. Just have your say. You've got to. And even if you just make a mess of the voting card so that your vote doesn't count, that's fine. You've actually done your duty to the community. Yeah. There is a strong reason for compulsory voting.
Yeah. And I think in the last election, a lot of people felt like their vote wasn't going to count because they wanted to vote third party, which personally I think we should. So they just didn't vote. It's never going to happen if you don't vote. If enough people actually did it, we could possibly make it happen. But
I mean, it's a little bit the same here. There are two major parties, and then they make up government through the minor parties if they don't win an outright majority. But this time, the minor parties took such a portion of the vote. The governments, both Labor and Liberal, are going, oh my gosh.
Well, now what?
Maybe we better pay attention. Because we were heading down with our last Prime Minister, and many people will disagree with me, but he is an evangelical Christian, and we were heading more and more down the right-wing path, only on the skirting edge, nothing like Trump or even Boris Johnson, but skirting on the edges of it, you know? And I was just like, no.
Yeah.
There was a big swing to independence in our last election. So the Green Party, for heaven's sake, actually got 4 seats in the lower parliament, which is unheard of.
Wow.
Absolutely unheard of. So there's been a bit of a change in Australia. We've kind of taken stock of things, and that comes from the compulsory voting.
See? If anyone in America is listening right now, do it. Let's make it happen.
Never wasted, because it's taken a long time to build up to this, but you just keep going and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And it will happen eventually. But yeah, two-party politics.
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
I don't think presidents do either. I know you followed the French system. That's why you get a president, but I don't think that works.
Yeah.
It's personality-based.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being so open and honest, because it actually takes a lot of courage.
Yeah. I was a little bit nervous. I was like, well, how much am I actually going to say? But it kind of felt good to say it out loud too. So,
yeah.
To someone besides my husband after 2 glasses of wine. And I'm like, you know what I think?
I know, because you alluded to it before, and I was gonna say something, but the conversation carried on. Religion and politics are the two things, and money. You do not talk about them in public. You don't discuss them in public. They're very private things, and especially not when you're around people. And the experiences of the last 5 or 6 years have just proved that as being the case. Don't talk about religion and politics. And here we are.
Right.
The whole conversation about religion and politics.
Exactly.
And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the feedback on this conversation is. But yeah. Please keep me updated with what feedback you personally get.
I will.
I would be interested to hear.
Yes. I'm a little nervous. But
I'll give you fair warning. You can go on holiday for a week till it's all calmed down.
Yeah. It's part of my dipping my toes back in and standing in my own truth and core values. So here we go.
It is. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Kerri.
Thank you for having me back, Karen.
You're welcome. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted, and rate and review this podcast and share it with your friends, please. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you're leaving with some great ideas that can make a difference in your everyday life. Until next time.